had the opportunity to see Shortcomings at Sundance, and then I just recently rewatched it. It stars Justin Min and Sherry Cola, and comes from Randall Park as director. So does this introspective comedy deliver? Ben is a struggling filmmaker, and when he's not managing an art house movie theater as his day job, Ben spends his time obsessing over unavailable blonde women, watching Criterion DVDs, and eating in diners with his best friend Alice, a queer grad student with a serial dating habit. When Ben's girlfriend Miko moves to New York for an internship, Ben is left to his own devices and begins to explore what he thinks he might want. So if you're a fan of the Umbrella Academy, you'll recognize Justin Min, who plays Ben in that series. Now he also plays Ben in this film. And for the majority of the movie, he is a grating and self-absorbed downer of a character. He's serially unhappy, acerbic, and often says rather mean things to everyone, friends included. And while his character is off-putting, it's part of the point, so that we can watch a character study as someone has to learn to examine their life and figure out what they want. Now, I was constantly rooting for Ben to just figure his crap out and stop being so negative, but rather than to look at himself to determine what he wants his trajectory to be. Ben's best friend is Alice, played by Sherry Cola, who was just most recently in Joyride. Now, she is sarcastic and witty with a ton of fast quips and often poking fun at Ben and his downer attitude. She also calls him out on his junk pretty often, but ironically, she's a bit blind to her own faults. Now, she's more of a faster learner than Ben, and then that enables her to speak some wisdom into his life and hopefully open his eyes. Now, the movie's a quick one at just 90 minutes, and while it's not a laugh fest, there is humor, and it made me smirk and it kept me amused. Now, a lot of that also came from supporting characters and the small and just random bits of dialogue that they had. Now, for example, Ben manages a movie theater, and two of his employees are played by Jacob Batalon and Scott Cease. And they're overly enthusiastic about movies, and they can even be a little pretentious at times. But they also have lines like Batalon's character saying how the Spider-Man movies are excellent. I mean, these are small pop culture references that are great if you're in the know, and then they fly right by if you aren't in the know. Now, the crux of the entire movie hinges on whether or not Ben can recognize his shortcomings and then make changes to grow. And while all the faults and the issues are more than obvious to us as the audience, if Ben can't figure them out, this becomes a lesson in futility, and then a very frustrating and even a depressing watch. Luckily, though, we do see character growth in him. I mean, it's not sudden and it's not overnight. We also don't get to see what fully comes of his learning, but we're given hope that he will now begin a new trajectory. From a technical perspective, the film looks great, and it works to capture the emotions of the characters, especially when we need to experience the same awkwardness or discomfort as those characters. I mean, the camera puts us right into their personal space, allowing us to be intimately close with them. The story is told in chapters, with each segment having a short title card, and this has been done countless times before, so it's not unique in any way. But it's also not annoying or cringy. I mean, it's just a small hint of who or what the next section is going to focus on. And I do like that it does provide some context, but it can also be seen as a lazy way to transition through the story. Like Park just couldn't figure out how to move from one scene to a completely different one, so hey, we're going to put up a card and boom, you're good to go with the switch. Now again, it didn't bother me, but there is a lack of originality within its usage. I really enjoyed the pacing of the story. Now while the movie itself is short, the journey we were on with Ben, it doesn't feel too rushed. We get to see enough of both good and bad interactions to provide the context and rationale for any changes that he may implement in his life. And the story works to continually highlight Ben's hang-ups and his flaws, each time surrounding the concepts with humor. Now, some of the comedy, it's snarky and it's biting, but it gives a necessary emotional punch, and it's a good way of delivering the needed message. Now, outside of Ben and Alice, most of the other characters, they're lightly developed. They're given enough information that we can know who they are, but really, no one ever becomes such a driving force within the narrative where we need to know more about them. I mean, even Miko, Ben's girlfriend, played by Ali Mackey, she's mostly a stranger. We just need to understand that she begins to feel tension and then strife with Ben, so she makes a decision to move across the country for space. Motivations outside of that, they're not really important, especially because she's not the one that we are watching with the growth journey. I think some of the setups with characters, they go for laughs, but they don't totally land, and then they aren't revisited, so they feel kind of like tangents. Like Alice takes Ben to meet her parents and grandfather at one point, and because of the cultural differences, the scene could be played for a lot of poignant humor, using very relevant and true emotions to reinforce how Ben falls short once again. And it does kind of work, but it's a one and done scene, so the few minutes spent on it don't really provide any good or lasting effect. And the plot points that have to do with Alice's parents, they'd already been established and explained previously, so we don't even need to ever see them. I mean, their context, it remains unchanged if they never show up. So overall, Shortcomings takes the concepts of blind spots, self-awareness, self-worth, and growth, and then pairs them with the idea of expectations and personal betterment to create an engaging, if not frustrating, character study. Justin Min and Sherry Cola captivate with their witty banter and biting commentary, with the true strength of the story coming through the examination of personal growth and maturity. The humor doesn't always land, but there is enough to provide amusement and chuckles that are then complemented by the veracity of stinging truth. With a quick pace and concise storytelling, the narrative flies by, but also does so by shallowly developing all of the supporting characters. Director Randall Park is off to a great start, using focused observation to craft an engaging, character-centric story, examining highly relatable values and behaviors. There's very brief sex, little nudity, a bunch of profanity, no violence. I give Shortcomings 3.5 out of 5 couches. So if you watched any good character studies lately, I'd love to hear about what you watched in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.